Hello everyone and welcome to today's video, my first video about food. Now recently I have started on a sourdough journey, so today you guys will see me make some sourdough bread. Here is my starter. You can see I've had it sitting out for probably about 4 to 5 hours after I fed it, and you can see it's doubled in size. It's the perfect consistency. It's a really strong and good starter. Now this is a starter that I bought off of someone else, but my goal is to have a starter of my own that I make from scratch. So I am starting that journey very soon, and I will be sharing those details with you guys probably within the next couple months. All right, so we're adding that starter to the bowl. You want to weigh it out. I'll have all measurements in the description box. After the starter, then you add in some water, and I love to do room temperature so that none of the enzymes in the starter are killed. And you want to make sure you don't use tap water either, because the fluoride or chlorine in the tap water could mess with your starter. So you mix that starter together, and then we're going to add our flour. Now, after you add the flour, and I forgot to mention, I did run out of bread flour. So what you saw me mixing in the bowl or pouring in the bowl the first time was bread flour, and I ran out. So now I am supplementing the last maybe 150 grams with all-purpose flour. You want to make sure that your all-purpose flour is unbleached and organic if you can. Now we're just gonna mix that together. Try to keep your flour in the bowl, unlike me. And we just want to mix it to get it into this nice kind of stringy flour dough texture. And you'll see that in a few moments. You don't want to mix too much, but just enough. Okay, so this is the consistency that you want. If you could see in the bowl, the dough is still somewhat like kind of stringy and, for lack of better words, crumbly. So that is what you want. And then you're just going to, of course, get the rest of the dough off of your spatula or whatever you're using to mix. You can also use like a bread whisk, which I have, but I just decided not to use today. And then we're just going to let this mixture sit. So go ahead and get a damp washcloth, and you want to make sure it's damp so the dough doesn't dry out. And then we're going to sit that on the counter for an hour. Now this is after the hour. We're going to go ahead and grab some spring water, pour it into a bowl, and dip our fingers in that so that our hands don't stick to the dough because it is very sticky. We're going to do our first round of stretch and folds. So as you can see, I just kind of like scoop the dough up on one side and then stretch it slightly and then fold it on top of itself. And you do this 4 times, just rotating 90 degrees each time. Now you're going to complete 4 sets of these stretch and folds with 20 minutes between each set. So here you see me grabbing that damp washcloth, placing it on top, and we're going to sit it for our first 20. Come back, do a set of stretch and folds, and right here is where you see me on my 4th and final stretch and fold. So I've already done 3 rounds of these, and you could tell how different the dough is. Look at the structure, look at how stretchy it is. Gluten has really formed here, and the dough is not as sticky either. So this is looking really good so far. Now for this final proofing process, you want to bring the dough into a nice tight ball. So as you can see, I'm a beginner with this, so I might be struggling a little bit to get that nice shape. But essentially, you just want to use your hands and just kind of work with it and pinch it on one side of the ball to get it into a nice form. Once you get into that nice form, you're going to place the ball of dough into your proofing basket, and that will sit for 6 to 12 hours. I'll be sitting mine on the counter. Some people like to put theirs in the fridge for a more slow fermentation, but do what is best for you. Now, what I will say here for the next part of this video is that I did put my dough into this basket and I sat it on the counter, but I put it right next to the stove. Now, mind you, I did cook a whole dinner. I cooked some chicken on the stovetop, and my kitchen in my house got really hot because my AC was not on. So you're going to see here as I pull out the dough after it's been sitting on the counter for about 6 hours, flouring my surface first. And as I reveal this, I was in shock. I did not know that my dough would be so proofed. It was hard on the top. I really wish that I would have maybe wrapped it or maybe put a damp towel on top. But this is why you put the damp towel on top, because you could see it's dried out and it is clearly overproofed. So what I've heard and what I've read about sourdough bread is that the dough is very forgiving. So my first instinct was like, oh no, I messed up. I'm gonna have to start over and do this whole process all over again. But then another side of me was like, you know what, let me see what I can do with this dough. Let me see if I can fix this situation. So I'm just scooping that dough out, of course using some water because it is super duper sticky now. And I'm just gonna pour it out onto that floured surface and see what I could do to it. See if I can save this loaf. All right, we got the dough out of there. Now we're just gonna go ahead and work on forming this ball. Now the dried pieces that were on the top, I'm doing my best to try to hydrate them. Even though I am rolling them around in flour, the dough itself is very high hydration. So I'm kind of using the dough to fold over onto the dry pieces and kind of melt that into the dry so that it can find some hydration there. I didn't want to add any more water unnecessarily to it. I just kind of wanted to use the hydration that was already in the dough to kind of balance itself out. Now you see me pinching it up, forming that nice little ball once again. Adding a little bit of flour because adding that water is going to make it a little sticky. You saw that I did add some water to my hands when I started doing the pinching. So yeah, it's definitely a little bit of an intuitive process of trying to figure out, add a little water here, add a little flour there, and you just kind of like have to play around with your dough. And now you see me scooting it towards myself to tighten up that ball a little bit. So you just kind of like roll it around and scoot, and that helps to give it a little bit more form. All right, now we're moving on to our final step. We're going to let this baby sit. So you're going to lightly flour your proofing bowl, place your dough into that bowl. And I like to do a slow fermentation because I like a really nice, hearty, sour tasting bread. The longer you let it sit, the more those enzymes just kind of work in the bread, and it gets a nice, rich, flavorful dough is your outcome. So placing that, the dough actually looks very nice. You see all of those air pockets here? I'm actually pretty happy with it, even though it was overproofed to begin with, but so far so good. So we're gonna place this top back on, and we're also going to place some plastic wrap on top of it as well so that it doesn't dry out like it did the first time. So placing that plastic wrap on top, we're going to pop this in the refrigerator for a slow fermentation for up to 36 hours. Now, I believe that I did let mine proof for the full 36 hours this time. Now that I'm ready to bake my bread, I'm going to pop my cast iron Dutch oven into the oven so that it can preheat along with the oven at 500 degrees. This is going to preheat for about an hour, and in the meantime, I went ahead and took my dough out of the fridge, and ta-da! It's pretty much overproofed again. This thing is huge, but look at those air pockets. I really think that this dough is going to have some nice structure, even though it is a little overproofed. Now off camera, I went ahead and floured this parchment paper and flipped it on over. And we're just going to scoop that dough out on top of this parchment paper. Now, once again, this dough is very overproofed. We are seeing if we can save it. So when you're doing it, your dough might not be like this. It'll probably just slip right out of the proofing basket. But for me, I'm struggling a little bit today. So I am scraping all of that dough out. Now that we've got that dough out, off camera, I went ahead and floured the surface and the top of the dough once again. And I'm just kind of rolling it over just to get some of this moisture out of the dough. It is just too sticky. I need it to form. It's not having a lot of structure right now because it is overproofed, so I'm doing my best to see if I can just roll it over on top of itself. And I'm so sorry that you're just getting a nice show of my shoulder here, but I'm just kind of rolling it over, doing my best to see if I can form a nice structure of a ball here. So I'm done working with my dough, and even though this isn't the best shape, it is what I got to work with today. So I'm gonna go ahead and mark this with a razor blade just to give it some room to breathe as the dough is baking. I think one big slice is all I did this time. Usually I like to do a little bit more with my decoration, but since it is overproofed, this is the best I can do. Now we're going to open our oven, our preheated oven. It is nice and hot. Please be very careful as you are taking your Dutch oven out, and place it on a surface that you know is not going to be scarred. Like, definitely don't place it directly onto your cutting board or onto the counter. So I'm going to go ahead and take this parchment paper and gently lay my dough into my Dutch oven. Cover that back up with the top, pop it back into the oven, and this is going to cook for 20 minutes. It's been 20 minutes, so we're gonna go ahead and check on our loaf. Once again, be very, very careful taking your Dutch oven out. 500 degrees is nothing to play with, you guys. Alright, the dough isn't looking bad so far. It's looking pretty decent. It expanded. It's a nice light brown color. So we're just going to take that top off, pop it right back in the oven. We're going to reduce the temperature to 450 degrees and cook it for another 20 minutes. It's been 20 minutes, so let's check on our sourdough loaf. Guys, that looks pretty good. I am pleasantly surprised. I think people online are right when they say that sourdough loaf can be saved. It is very forgiving, the dough is. And yeah, I can't wait to slice into this thing. But first, I'm going to make sure I let it cool for probably a good hour. And let it cool completely on a wire rack. And then I will go back to slice into this thing and show it to you guys. Alright, y'all, this has been cooling on the counter for hours. And it feels really good. It looks okay. I've definitely baked better looking sourdough bread, but here is the moment of truth where we cut into it, and it looks good. You guys, look at all of those air pockets. It looks like it has good structure. It's nice and soft and spongy. Overall, I cannot believe I saved this loaf. It looks good. I tried it later. It tastes good. It is a nice sour flavor. The texture is perfect. So yeah, take this as a note that you can always save your sourdough bread. It is very forgiving, especially if you have a good starter. So now I'm just gonna go ahead and take this bag. Isn't this so cute? Handmade with love, or homemade with love. And I'm just going to put my loaf in there. This is it, you guys. This is how I saved my overproofed sourdough. If you guys have any tips or tricks that you have, please leave them in the comments down below, and I'll see you all in the next video.